Buddhism has made wonderful adaptations as it moves into new cultures, and what we're talking about at this minute is its adaptation to the Western culture. It isn't adapted yet, but it will find a way that fits into our understanding. And to me, this is not new. It's been happening since the West, which is not that long ago, discovered the East, rediscovered the East. But it was back at the same time as Einstein was working, when Alfred Northcote White, the great philosopher at Cambridge, he had a great interest in philosophy, but also treated the religions as a source of cultural information and philosophy. And he made the statement, which I can't remember word for word, but essentially saying that we have the Christian tradition, which our culture follows, but it doesn't explain itself that easily. It requires a belief basis. And probably the most significant thing that is happening in these terms is the introduction of Buddhism to our culture to help explain what Christianity really means. Now, they're my words, but he said something that means that.
Right. Well, you actually convey something quite beautiful. Buddhism doesn't necessarily have to be an ism. And that you are taking, perhaps, either use its concepts or use some of the essence of it and relate that in a Christian story. Maybe now is a good time to move to what are some of the impacts of this particular publication. What have you noticed? What have you received as far as feedback?
The biggest impact is probably on me, rather than the world at large. But some of the anecdotal feedback I've had is that people really like the story of the Indian man reading this to his young son as a contextual element. Now that comment came from a Western person who's lived most of her life, and she's an old lady, in Asia. Because to read the Buddhist scriptures or anything Buddhist as a Westerner, you end up being drawn into Asia. The problem with
at this point of the cultural evolution.
Exactly, good point, because it's gradually changing. But when we read the Christian scriptures, we don't feel ourselves drawn back into the Middle East. This is a very strange thing. Christianity is, there's the blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus syndrome.
It's a European culture.
It's a European culture. Very strange thing, considering that the words and the concepts and the metaphors of the agriculture of the Middle East and the deserts. So you don't have those two things. So for people who appreciate Asia yet are Western, saying that the context of the story around it helps to relate the story, because the two stories actually work in parallel. I don't want to give away the ending. Most people know how the gospel is.
Yes.
So this has its own variations. But other feedback on the book, some people have said that why bother doing this? The stories are here. We've got our own stories. So that's the negative side. The positive side, though, has been that it provides food for thought. I hadn't thought of it meaning that. So when you have some of the apparently dogmatic statements of Jesus in the Gospels, and sit back and think about them and the context that they're in, they're not necessarily dogmatic for telling the world. They may be a response to an individual who has said something.
Correct.
Just as in the Buddhist scriptures,
that's right.
you have the context is terribly important. You know how it is in the Buddhist scriptures. You can pull out opposite statements if you just take these things. You should eat meat, you shouldn't eat meat. You can find both.
Absolutely.